Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to kick us off here. So, welcome everybody to our Food Safety Educators Meetup. My name is Clint Stevenson. I'm at NC State University, and we are all so excited to start a series of meetups because what we want to do is build a community of practice for all of us food safety educators working in the field, whether we're working in higher education, which is what this project is aimed at, or if you're in another capacity. We all do food safety education, whether you're in industry, regulatory, with a certification body, doing consulting, and those types of things. So, what I want to do is explain the objectives of this meetup. Um, Oops, the font got a little wonky there, but our first objective is we just wanted to call out some of the challenges in education, food safety education. I want to talk about the workforce shortages that we're facing. And we also want to discover new ideas for inspiration. That's why we're excited to hear from our speaker, Dr. Abby Snyder up at Cornell University. And hopefully everyone will gain some ideas and tips and go motivated, leave the meetup motivated to go take different actions. And finally, we'll open it up to discussion, and we want to hear from everyone who's a participant here in the meetup. So the format is I'm going to give an overview. I have about 10 slides. It might take 15 minutes or so. And then I'm going to hand it over to you, Abby. And you said you have about 10 to 20 minutes somewhere in there. And then we'll open it up to discussion. So before we jump too far in, let's just do brief introductions for everyone else here. Before I turn it over to Janet and Abby and Chris, I want to invite everyone who's a participant here. Looks like we got a great group so far. If you would, please use the chat, or I think it's an open, there should be a Q&A button there at the bottom of your screen. We want to hear from you. Who are you? Who are you with? What are your interests in food safety education? So, Janet, would you like to go next? And then we'll go to you, Abby, and then Chris.
Sure. My name's Jana Buffer. I'm with the Institute for Food Safety and Nutrition Security, which is affiliated with the Milken Institute School of Public Health at George Washington University. And I've been on this project from inception with Dr. Stevenson. So this is really excited that we're getting our community of practice launched and that you're all here. And now I'll turn it over to Abby.
Thanks. I'm Abby Snyder. I'm Associate Professor of Microbial Food Safety at Cornell University. I'll give some more details when I start talking about my teaching program, but that's the basics.
Thanks, Abby.
Hi, I'm Chris Willett. I work with Dr. Clint Stevenson at the Department of Food Bioprocessing and Nutrition Sciences at NC State University. And I produce design and marketing. And I'm really excited to be a part of this today.
Absolutely. And thanks to you participants who are introducing yourselves. So excited to have you, Fernando. I know you're doing amazing things with SQF there in Puerto Rico. And nice to meet you, Chitra and Dan. So we hope that this meetup series begins what becomes friendships and new network connections so that we can all find common grounds and work together towards solving our problems. So getting back to the presentation, I just kind of wanted to share my story because I think my story is what kind of instigated what we're working on here, at least from my perspective. These are some pictures of some of the jobs and internships that I've worked with before I came back to higher education. You can see I'm at the top left here. This is me on the graveyard shift, third shift, working at a cheese factory. And each time I went to go work a job or an internship, then I came back to school, I noticed how there weren't as many people interested in working as a food safety practitioner, being boots on the ground, as there were jobs, because I noticed there were always jobs out there. It was always easy for me to find jobs. And I also noticed that oftentimes the folks working in these facilities don't necessarily have the full comprehensive background, both theoretical, but especially practical knowledge as it pertains to food safety prerequisite programs, HACCP principles, and all of those things. So it's just been a natural curiosity of mine, and that's part of what brought me to NC State University to work on the faculty, to be part of the solution. So I'm going to talk about the project that we're working on this year. But first, I just want to share some slides that kind of paint the picture. Just thinking about the workforce in food safety and some of the figures that highlight our job as educators to both recruit, and then once we have people that we've recruited, to develop them through rich learning experiences, hands-on learning, and things like that. The only data we had access to was public data from government agencies, but some of these figures kind of woke me up. Like 77% of employees in the field have less than 5 years experience. And this is looking at regulatory agencies that work with food safety. Looking down here, 74% of the workforce is under the age of 35. So we have a very, dynamic and changing workforce. Here's some more. Turnover rates for food safety inspectors. This was data from about a year ago. I'm not sure what the current situation looks like with the change in administration, but the turnover rates, 12 to 25%, vacancy rates of 10 to 15%. And there's a growing demand for inspectors just because of how much industry is growing. The world needs to eat, and we see more and more food businesses, bigger food businesses. And as a consequence, we've heard that some regulatory agencies are waiving the qualification requirements of having an undergraduate degree to become a food safety inspector. So that's what kind of got our attention and put our heads together to work on a consortium, a collaborative effort to solve some of these problems. And here's some more consequences and just tidbits. If you look at food regulatory inspection positions, it takes a lot of time to train people to be inspection ready, to go hit the field and do inspections. You can see 9 to 36 months, depending on what the specialty is. So that doesn't help the problem, because once you recruit someone, it takes so much time to develop them. And trainees do not conduct their own inspections or audits during the training period, which makes it costly. It's difficult to train people how to do audits and inspections. And some of the figures we saw were 200 or 300 manufactured food facilities assigned to one inspector. I'd be curious to talk to some more regulatory folks to see what that looks like now, and 30 to 40 facilities per third-party auditor. So these are just some of the numbers that caught our attention. And moving on to some other observations, we identified that there is not necessarily a targeted curriculum that specifically across the board, if you look at like food science departments in higher education or environmental health, we couldn't really pinpoint one that a lot of educators are using that specifically designs future food safety practitioners and engages them with auditing experiences, inspection experiences. A lot of times our curriculum is multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary, and it's preparing people for a variety of careers, not just food safety practitioner or food safety auditing. And so we identified this as an opportunity, and we want to, through this meetup, ask you and invite you all to work together with us. So here's the banner slide for the USDA grant project that we're working on. Our goal is to develop a diverse and competent workforce in this field. You can see all of our collaborators. We have Adrian Shear from the University of Delaware leading the program evaluation for the project. Barrett Vaughn at Tuskegee is leading a marketing campaign that will go out soon this year, probably, that will go out on social media. It'll be dedicated towards certain areas, and it'll be targeting young people, people looking for a lateral career entry, maybe if they're already established in their career. And that's going to develop some research-based ideas for what are the best practices for recruiting. What are the do's and don'ts if you're going to be sharing with people? We need you in food safety. What do you say to kind of put away some of those stereotypes. And then we have Nicole Arnold at Ohio State University, who is helping us to develop the community of practice and things like that. And the International Food Protection Training Institute will be hosting the curriculum that I'm going to talk about briefly and making it available to educators to access. And then we have Janet Buffer and Katie Stolt-Carroll, as well as Barb Kowalczyk at George Washington University. So we're hoping that in time, this meetup is a kickstart to a broader collaboration so that we can add a bunch more logos here. If you would like to work with us or just be with us, we've got a seat in the room for you. So just to talk a little bit more about the 5 objectives of our project before we turn it over here. One of the objectives that we're leading here at NC State, in collaboration with all the collaborators, we're developing what I call a turnkey, shrink-wrapped curriculum to be taught at an introductory level in higher education that will invite all students. We're hoping this will be taught as like a general interest course. So you might have some history majors or some political science majors who take this class as an elective and actually enjoy it so much that they might consider a career in food safety. The first few modules will talk about the various aspects in food safety, working in international or working for the FDA or working for local health or working for a company. And then halfway through the curriculum is a lesson that's going to talk about the basics of performing an audit or an inspection. And then the rest of the curriculum will be exercises where they get to practice that. Let's practice looking at pest control. Let's look at cleaning and sanitation. The curriculum will be delivered in a sense that you can deliver it asynchronously because there will be online modules. And if you want to teach it in person, live, then we'll have a format for that too. They'll come with lesson plans, learning activities with rubrics and quizzes and things like that. So if you join us now, you can have an input into what the curriculum will look like because we need to hear from you to make it tip-top, best shape, easy to teach. Objective number 2 is we're going to develop a community of practice starting today with this meetup series. So this is the first of hopefully many. Like I said, the goal is to create sort of a teaching club where we can find out who else teaches food safety. What have you learned that I haven't tried yet? What are your challenges? Maybe you have resources that you would like to share and things like that. The third objective goes back to the curriculum where we're going to identify a sustainable model for disseminate the curriculum that I mentioned in Objective 1. I already mentioned Objective 4, Tuskegee University, Barrett Vaughn is leading the research-based marketing strategies. And then I'm really excited also to accomplish Objective number 5, which the idea is to develop a network portal of food safety professionals who work at third-party certification bodies, FDA, state departments of ag, local health departments, people who are willing to put their name up somewhere and say, yes, if you're an educator or a student and you'd like to have a guest speaker, or if you would like to job shadow me for a few hours, then bring it on. I'd be happy to talk to you because I've identified as a food safety educator just how impactful it is to have those people willing to provide their time. Here is our funding statement. This is a higher education challenge grant from USDA. And I think this is my last slide. Go ahead and scan this QR code if you'd like, or grab my email address or save my phone. I'm a phone guy, so if you want to text or call me, we could chat. That would be fantastic. So I hope I made that clear that we would really like for you to reach out and join our effort. Chris, who introduced herself, has helped us develop a email list. We're going to be sending updates. We also are building a web page, so there'll be ways for you to stay in the know. So thank you for your time, and now I am excited to catch up on what I've been missing out in the chat, which Janet and Chris are going to help us monitor. And Abby, Dr. Snyder, we're ready for you to share all of your experiences doing fine work at Cornell. I've heard about all the exciting things you've been exposing students to with SQF and auditing experiences, but I know you're doing more. So the floor is yours now. Thanks, Abby.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. My philosophy here is just to share with you what we do and then have a discussion about things that you might be interested in your home institutions or programs afterwards. So just for some context of kind of like how this fits in my broader role, um, I have a 50-50 split for research and teaching. In my department, all assistant professors come in as 50% research, period. And then you either have 50% teaching and 50% extension. And I actually do really love the consistency in those appointments. So it's not like somebody has, 42% this, 13.5% that. It's very clear. And in my department, a 50% teaching appointment typically means two classes. So I teach one in the fall and one in the spring, and then a little bit extra. So maybe you coordinate seminar, run a journal club. There's a sort of like a little bit plus, but generally speaking, it's two classes for that appointment. Before this, I was an extension specialist, and that was my first job out of my PhD. I mentioned that because it was like heavily engaged with industry, and so I did process authority work. I did all of the certificate trainings, a lot of consultation on site, and so that those experiences, especially for people if you come from a purely academic background, are really important if you're going to be teaching students about some of these applied food safety systems and auditing. I also am a contract auditor, primarily for SQF, but I'll do GMP or Costco, other sort of random certifications. I don't do a ton. This is like not my full-time gig. I do close to the minimum number required to maintain that certificate each year. And then that gives me a lot of flexibility to be selective in terms of like, that's too far away. I'm not going to do that one. Or certain sites, right? That I'll be like, I really would like to, I would like to see what they do. So I do this because I think number one, it really is a great opportunity, almost as a researcher, to see inside diverse facilities at a great level of detail. And so that's probably the main reason, because it does get to be a lot, right? Like I'll sign up and then I have to write the report and I'm like, why did I do this? But it's a really interesting learning experience. I think it makes me a better instructor too, especially advising students who, for the most part, are going to go into the industry. So I'm in academia, but most of the people I mentor at the undergrad or graduate level will likely go into the industry in some form. I teach this, of course, like we're going to talk about. So this gives me a lot of insight there. And occasionally I'm able to bring students along to job shadow here. So if it's a virtual audit, I have a local one next week, actually, where I'm able to bring one of the PhD students in my group. And so that's really nice for them as well. So I mentioned that I teach two classes. In the fall, I teach food micro lecture, and then in the spring, I teach food safety assurance. Food safety assurance, which I'm in now, is the course where this auditing curriculum comes up. But I bring up food micro lecture just to kind of compare and contrast with what are the sort of boilerplate, typical food micro educational experiences that food science students get kind of across the board. So in food micro lecture, um, as probably many of you know, it's a lot of focus on the microbes, mechanisms, biochemical pathways, detection methods or tools, subtypings, interventions for their control. We cover safety, spoilage, and fermentation. But this is a class that is really foundational, required for all our majors, and it's building content knowledge so that people who don't have previous experience to the field of food microbiology know the basics. And in both of these classes, I spend a lot of time talking to students about why classes are designed by me the way they are, because I think if students can get some of the buy-in in the instructional design, it gives them a framework to understand what they're doing in there at a higher level. So I acknowledge with them that this is going to be a class that's about building content knowledge. We have closed book exams where they have to be able to demonstrate that they have absorbed and can synthesize some of that material back. And so we also talk about soft skills. And so in this course, the real focus is on metacognition. So like, let's ignore, I did not love biology as an undergrad because I felt like it was memorizing science factoids. And some of what absorbing content knowledge requires of us as students in classes where that's the goal is development of strategies to absorb content. And so we talk about building those, and there's, shared notes, and there's low stakes quizzes, and there's a bunch of stuff there that I'm not going to go into detail, but like philosophically, that's that class. This is very different than food safety assurance. Food safety assurance is much more project focused. So there's not so much content to absorb, right? People don't have to like regurgitate back chapter and verse of the CFR or code elements of SQF. It's more about being able to apply ideas and develop certain work products, like a food safety plan, for example. So in terms of content, it's sort of prerequisite programs, GMPs, SSOPs, food safety plans, so HACCP and preventive controls. And then the end of the class is where we get into third-party audits. And again, the sort of soft skills here are in project management and group leadership. So a lot of the grade is really focused on project outcomes, some of which is in group, some is independence, but they do like a team agreement, and there's a peer evaluation process. And so a lot of that is the sort of soft skill conversation in this course. So I bring this up just as a compare and contrast, like they're very different. They're very different in content, they're very different in structure and the intention of sort of what you're teaching students. The goal for me, and now I'm focusing on food safety assurance kind of from here on out. So the goal for me really is to produce very high caliber future food safety employees. And I assume that everyone in this class is going to or reasonably likely to work in some capacity in food safety. And I mean this truly. My goal is that like we want people who come out of this program to be known for how good at food safety they are, and I take it personally. I also think a lot about helping students map the landscape of what career skills are available within the field of food safety. Undergrads definitely, and to some extent grad students, are really familiar with product development and maybe a little of R&D, and not so much with what you do with a degree in food safety or a focus in food safety. And so these are actually screenshots from slides from food safety assurance where I'm like, let's look at some Glassdoor jobs. Like, what are the search terms you would use if you were on the job market to find different job postings available in food safety? Like, what are the titles? What are titles that are entry level? And then what are the sectors you would work in? And so we look at sort of regulatory positions, we look at industry positions, we look at academic positions, what degrees would be required, what credentialing would be required under these different sort of job schemes. We also look at how some of the certificates they earn in this course could go on a resume and can be marketed if they were to apply to future jobs. And students tend to like really like that as juniors and seniors, so like top of mind. I, in my teaching role, also really try to take a scholarly approach to education as well. So I'm sharing here these are some papers we've published. We publish, low frequency, but over time, articles in peer-reviewed journals related to pedagogical strategies. So some is content, like this is curriculum. Some is method of delivery. So we did some like during the pandemic where we had to like modify our course plans. Some, this is the metacognition paper that actually should be live this month, more for food micro lecture, but it's about how to build those strategies and sense of competence among students. And so this is a thing that has high value in my group. And I also, like you'll see, there's co-authors, right? There's students or postdocs in the group or other of my colleagues. And so this is something we value like as an ethic within my lab. I also share all of our resources for education freely. It's definitely true that teaching materials are like intellectual products, but I don't think it's something where ownership has any, like this is a non-competitive space. So I can't make stuff for you new, but if ever there's stuff you want of mine, you can have it. I've given like the entire PowerPoint series for food micro lecture to people. So you want it, it's yours. That's just a standing offer for anyone. Okay, deep dive into food safety assurance. So I mentioned content-wise, there's a variety of things. I'm going to now focus on the auditing portion of that lecture class. So we talked kind of big picture about first, second, and third party audits. The focus we get into is really on the SQF code as our example, because at some point we just want to drill down and look at the specifics of one specific code and implementation of that. And I have the most experience here. At the end of the course, one of the assignments for the class is to take the SQF online practitioner exam. They take a screenshot of their grade, and that I take that as one of their assignments. And that is a way they earn a credential as part of the class, right? So they cover the content in class, and then they take the practitioner exam at the end. And so that's like a perk of the class. Other things we do in terms of active learning, I'm going to go into a few of these in particular. So in this class, they developed several actually written food safety plans. So a written, flow chart, hazard analysis, all of the different either HACCP or benefit control, depending on what we're doing. They give 2 oral presentations on it as well. We do a mock audit of our dairy plant. I'll talk about that in more detail. This year, we're going to try a mock recall. I'm going to give a little detail on that. This class is a co-meet of 3960 and 5960. So we have juniors and seniors as well as grad students who are enrolled in 5960. The grad students have an additional assignment where they act as a consultant and they review a flawed HACCP plan. In this class, I used to do it where I would basically adapt plans that I've seen as flaws. Now we just use one as a model, but interestingly, this is the assignment that people tend to do the worst on. And I think it's because if you give people a completed document, they think, oh, it's probably fine, as opposed to generating it sort of de novo, where they then check themselves more. And so for whatever reason, that mental hurdle makes this more difficult. So that's a grad student assignment. They write an executive summary, so some technical writing in consents way, and then they have to provide the corrected plan. We're doing an industry tour this year as well. I asked students how many of them had never been in a food plant, and about a third of them said that they had not, which is crazy to me that you would finish food science and maybe not. So I'm going to be the change I want to see in the world. I found a company that's going to let us come in and bring these students in groups. So we're going to have their SQF practitioner give the tour and answer questions this year. And then they do a bonus exercise, which is food safety memes. And so I'm going to end the talk there. You can see some of their food safety memes. All right. So major activity, probably the favorite of the class, is a mock audit of our dairy plant. We have a plant that makes ice cream, processes fluid milk, and it's commercially licensed by the state. And we are able to take the students through there to do a mock audit as an exercise when we get to the audit portion of this course. I serve as the SQF practitioner, and they serve as the auditor. And so I'm okay, hey, welcome to the plant. And so they can ask me questions. And their assignment is to complete an audit report at the end of it. So I give them the code, which is extremely long, and they only have to respond to 5 elements, and they can pick whatever elements that they find evidence for that shows either conformance or non-conformance with that element. They have to do at least one of each. And then at the very end of class, the last day is actually a debrief where we look at their reports and I pull out some of the specific responses that they have to code elements. And we talk about and Kim, who's my colleague you'll see in this video I'm going to show in a second, comes in and she takes half the group too and said, this is what I saw. This is what you saw. If I were at a commercial plant, Kim also is an SQF auditor. How would you have evaluated this, right? How would you have scored that? And we sort of debrief it with the students. So I'm going to play, and Clint, you can stop me if the audio isn't coming through. It doesn't super matter, but I'm going to play this video that I made during 2020 when we could not do in-person mock audits. So this is a video of an audit. And so Kim, you'll see and you'll hear my voice pretending to be a practitioner. So during virtual learning, we use this. And now if any of the students are absent on the day of the mock audit, I'm well, guess what? So we have this recording here. And so I'm just going to play a minute of it to give a flavor of kind of what this looks like. Hi, welcome to our dairy plant. Before we take you out into some of the production areas, we're going to need you to come to the front office and sign in. We ask everyone who comes here to do this. This is the list of GMPs we would ask you to review as well before we head into production. Okay, so after putting on some PPE, your hairnet and your lab coat, I see you already have closed-toed shoes on. We're gonna head into the receiving bay. This here is our trash dock, but we're gonna head into the receiving bay now. This is where we bring raw milk into the plant. This here is a materials cabinet. We keep small supplies that we use in the receiving bay. And so on and so forth, right? We just go like a 20-minute video. So during this, they're left to identify conformances and not evidence of conformances or non-conformance against different elements. And so I have an example of like a piece of a report that a student turned in. This was an element of the code. So that's the numbered bold text at the top, 11322. And then their evidentiary statement here at the bottom. And I believe this was for what they considered to be a non-conformance. So some of the stuff when we sort of debrief and we share this back, we're like, okay, you provided an evidence statement. Does it actually provide evidence for this element of the code? So a lot of the code talks about documentation, and during the mock audit, we're not looking at documentation at all. And so sometimes they'll ask a question and they'll be like, oh, do you have a food safety plan? And I'll be like, yes. And I'll be like, food safety plan. And then that's the evidence for the documentation. It doesn't match. So that would be like one of the ways we debrief the quality of their reports. In this example, I was there. Everyone was washing their hands before we go in, and like the automated paper towel dispenser jammed. And I was like, oh, like I'm going to have to go get somebody to fix this. And they scored it as a non-conformance. And I was like, yeah, I think if I were auditing a plant, this is not a thing that I would score as a non-conformance because it happens and they fixed it. And like, it's not that nothing can ever malfunction for a second. It's that you would fix it, right? This isn't a systemic issue. So I think what is really nice about actually doing a mock audit is that when you're in class and you're like, have a hand wash sink, have this stuff, have X, you're like, yes, of course, makes sense, makes sense, makes sense. When students go into, and our dairy plant is not like the highest capacity facility, it still is overwhelming to look at everything going on at the same time and in your mind collect evidence for different elements and evaluate like, is this appropriate or is this evidence of a non-conformance? And like actually like rubber meets the road on that is very difficult for students, and I think it's eye-opening. So at the end of this debrief, I'm also like, what experiential learning would you like to have been in this class? Because we make changes each year. And so one of the things they suggested last year was to do a mock recall. And I was like, yeah, that's like we could totally do that. And so students don't know this yet, but 2 weeks from now, we're going to do a mock recall in the lecture. And so I'm going to like start off, like pretend like I'm going to lecture. And then I've got a student actor. We had tried to find like a paid actor to come in and be like, stop everything. The dairy plant, we got contacted by FDA, we have to do a recall. And so we're going to break them up into groups, into different rooms. And like one of the teams is going to be doing the trace exercise and the mass balance. And one of the teams is going to be figuring out who they need to notify and drafting a public notification. And then one of the teams is going to be doing the root cause investigation and coming up with a CAPA, which I think is going to be training. So I think we're going to ask them to actually develop like a 1-point training as the outcome. So like TBD, it's probably going to be clunky the first time, but this is what we're doing this year in a couple of weeks. And then the last thing I have to share here are the memes. As an opportunity to earn an extra bonus point or two, they can submit a meme or like a TikTok video. So that's 2 points. If they do that one, it has to be factually correct. And they have to be okay with me sharing it on social media. And like about a third of them are actually very funny. So I always enjoy these. And then again, this sort of last day of class, we play the video of these and we all laugh. So that probably one of the top centers, one of my favorites. I think I should just use that in my own lecture content in some ways. There's a lot of good stuff in some of these memes. So that's what I have for you in terms of what we do here within food safety assurance. And I'm happy to start the dialogue now and answer all the questions you have.
Okay, excellent, Abby. Thank you so much. This kind of brings it full circle since I was networking with you guys at Cornell, and um, I think now I have some ideas of how I want to change my teaching. I do want to start off with a question or two just to get the juices flowing, but I put a note in the chat to the audience. Would anyone mind if we make you all, we can click this button where we can promote you to the panelists so we can see you, we can hear from you, so we don't have to rely on the chat. So I'm just going to go ahead and start doing that. Let me know if you prefer not to. This is being recorded, and we can put you back into the other room there. So Janet and Chris, if you would help me promote people to panelists, that would be fantastic. So Abby, one question I got for you. What's your biggest barrier facing students who want to get into auditing after graduation? Because a lot of them hear about these jobs and think they're going to be exciting. They think about the idea of traveling to a bunch of facilities and getting experience, and then they hear the pay that comes along with it. And it's just great experience to build a resume. So what are your thoughts? What have you done with these situations?
Yeah. So definitely we have students and we have a program for like a 1-year master's. And so I actually think a lot of those students see this as like a very good career option for them moving out of their degree. I think the big problem for students who want to go directly from like a academic degree program into auditing is that a lot of those jobs require minimum industry experience. Like I think, don't quote me on this, but I think for SQF it's 5 years and maybe it's 2 years. Regardless, they don't have it. And so I think that becomes the primary barrier for them transitioning directly into a role where they would be an auditor. So I think that I also, when I talk to them about people who are interested in this, auditing full time is a lot of travel, right? Like you talk about the pay, and depending on if their contract or oh, look, Jessica Osborne is on the call. That is extremely funny. Yes, I audit for Jessica. So you are traveling full time. And so whether if your contract is a little bit different, but you have to be auditing to get the money. And so that lifestyle can be very intense and not necessarily work out for people at all the different points in their life. So I would say those are the two things I talk to students about. One is like industry experience, you got to have it. And the other is recognize if you intend to be a full-time auditor, the amount of travel that is required for that is typically very high.
Excellent. We are trying to get everyone in here. It's a little delayed for some reason, but good to see you guys. Nice to see you, Jessica. It's nice talking with you twice in 1 week. That's great. Eagle certification I learned this week while talking with Jessica is doing amazing things, trying to help promote the workforce. You're doing things in high school. You've got a lot of ideas with community colleges. So that's a good reminder that four-year institutions aren't the only places that are a recruiting grounds. I want to turn to you, Jessica Ferreira. I saw your notes in the chat. Would you like to clarify now that we got you in the room here?
Yeah, my mind's going crazy here. So I have a culinary arts background and I got into food safety by working for Dunkin' Corporate. So that's how I learned food safety more. I was just passionate in restaurants. And then I've done some QA work and then local, state, federal inspections. And now I'm a food safety trainer for the state. And I think this is an amazing idea. It's just, I'm asking you a bunch of questions like you're talking about auditing. So I'm thinking like, you talk about SQF, but what about PCIQ and all other auditors like, Ecolab has auditors, all these different type of avenues. There's so many of them. So would you just focus on SQF, or would you say maybe round out 3 auditing, certifications that are top of mind? And then like, for example, if you're going to talk about food safety inspections, are you just going to focus on like federal, or are you going to focus on local, state, and federal? Because they're all different. They all have different inspections, requirements, forms, etc. So that's kind of, I was wondering, like in a nutshell, what is this program just doing a couple things, or are they going to kind of talk about everything? Because you can do so much with this program.
I can talk about what we do in class, but Clint, I think the question is maybe more towards the goals of your overall project.
Maybe I can take a stab at it. And by the way, as we're trying to promote people to panelists here, it's sending messages that says declined to be promoted to a panelist. So if anyone has a tip there, I don't know if you need to find your name and click a button, but or maybe you just chose not to be in the room here, which is totally fine. But yeah, Jessica, good question. With the introductory level curriculum that we're developing, that we're hoping others will find useful, whether you want to use one module or all 15 or however many there will be just to whet their appetite, maybe freshman, sophomore level, because to get into the whole PCQI and HACCP and SQF, that's going to be too much for one course. So we're going to, don't use the word dumb it down, but it'll be inclusive of all careers. And as we engage them with virtual auditing experiences, or some of the lesson plans will equip an educator with a lesson plan for like, hey, go to your local cafeteria and do observations. If you can find one that, especially where you can see the kitchen. And we're going to focus on best practices, whether you're in food service or manufacturing. It all kind of boils down to the same type of stuff, more or less. I know there's that food code versus CFRs and Title IX versus Title 21. So we're trying to spare them for other courses, advanced courses, where they can study that for a semester. But yeah, I appreciate your experience coming in it from I saw it when you signed up, you're in Massachusetts, is that right? Working with the state?
Yeah, if you can't tell by my accent.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm a central food safety trainer, so we have a training program now that has 10 training hubs throughout the state who then train local boards of health. So super excited to be a part of the program. Been super passionate about it my whole life, so I'm very thankful.
Excellent. Well, I have another couple questions I was going to ask Abby, but I've said enough. We want to open it up to everybody. What inspired you today? What are you doing that you would like to share? What ideas do you have? Like I said, we're hoping this will kind of create a teaching or education club for us in food safety where we can be open and share ideas.
So I'm Angela Wojtala. I'm at Texas Tech University, and we have been writing several grants, but we've been working with our Department of Agriculture, um, and on the Texas Food Safety and Defense now team, and we are trying to get more of our undergraduates and graduates to go audit scheme. So we partnered with I'm forgetting all the names within FDA to get our students to be able to take the inspection courses. So we just finished that this summer where they had a discounted rate to take all the inspection courses. So that will give them a leg up when they're interviewing. And then we've been also working on audit specific internships so that they can have some experience, recognizing that you need to have 3 to 5 years of um, in the food industry experience to be able to even qualify. So we're trying to work more diligently from freshmen on to make sure that they're getting audit inspections. The other thing that we're trying to we've had a lot of students interested, but when they see the pay, they're not interested. So bringing in full-time auditors to explain how they actually make a living of doing this and how it doesn't mean you have to always travel per se, that there's internal and state level if you want to per se not be on the road 365 days out of the year, and how this could be a profitable career. So we've been bringing those into our food science courses. So we're trying to get grants. Being a Hispanic serving institution, we really want to broaden that population. And so we're focusing on bilingual and being produce. So we're looking at, we need a lot more produce inspectors on the state level. So we've been really partnering with the Department of Ag here to help with that on-farm training as they're going out and seeing if they can have accreditation or hours for that. So we're able to place 2 students last year in extension offices down in the Valley so they could work with our Texas Department of Ag down there with their audit schemes. And so we're trying to create more opportunities like that for it to be. But I can say that I would love to hear from this group how to get interest, because immediately they go and look and they're like, there's no way I want to, after a 4-year degree, make that. So love to hear how you're motivating students to even think about the career path.
Thanks, Angela. It's so nice to have you with us. We've been exchanging emails and I've seen you at conferences, but this is our first time really finally getting together. So we're excited to hear all the awesome things you're doing at Texas Tech. And good question, because I mean, you go to a cocktail party and mention food safety inspections and people think about it in different ways, you know? And then you add the pay on top of that. But we're hoping through Barrett's work at Tuskegee, working with the research-based marketing work, we can identify some ways to wordsmith it and maybe encourage people to think about it in a different lens. For example, I mean, once you're trained after 3 years, 4 years working for the state doing inspections, you have an amazing resume, right? All that training, all those experiences, then that sets you up for future success, whether you stay there or not, go into private industry. Another aspect we were considering playing with is, if it's still true, you can have the federal government pay off your student debt if you work there for 10 years or whatever it is. Am I wrong on this? There's a lot of people with college student loan debt, you know what I mean? So talk about money. I mean, a degree costs $100,000 or whatever, or more, depending on where you go. So hopefully I know Barrett will be showing us some tips and tricks. And we're still trying to add people to panelists. I might give up here in a minute. That keep saying declined to be promoted. So if that's happening to you and you would like to weigh in and ask a question, make a comment, we're going to be monitoring the chat here. Janet, how are we doing? Are we missing any comments in the chat?
No, nope. We have answered everything so far.
I can share a few thoughts here. I mean, it's somewhere I think I got this email and became curious to join in and see what's going on here. So maybe my first interaction with all of you. So hello, everyone. I'm at South Dakota State University, and ours is a dairy and food science department. And as you would have known, we have undergraduate and a graduate program. So what I do, I am a microbiologist by training, and I teach 2 undergraduate courses, dairy microbiology and food microbiology. Like they're split 2+2 with labs and lectures, and there is advanced dairy and food microbiology, which is a 3-credit course for graduate students. So I didn't quite know about what is the overall objective of this meeting, but what I can share is that in my courses, since we teach a lot of food pathogens, foodborne pathogens, diseases, and we talk a whole lot about basically we go into food safety and quality assurance because many of our students, they undertake that path after they graduate. So typically either it is food microbiology or dairy microbiology, it would have like maybe 4, 5, 6 lectures devoted more towards like ISO 22017 or 25. And similarly, we do 4 to 5 labs where they develop their own critical control points and HACCP, and followed by the auditing within the classroom itself, where the project of one group of students, which is generally 2 as a group. So everybody, each one of them get a chance to be auditors. So that's not really how detailed Abby was talking about, but we do expose them to overall the aspect of quality assurance. Then in the graduate program, we do a lot of at least two major activities for the graduate students would be focused on statistical process control in food safety. And then that relates now since last 2 years by including generative AI as a tool to promote the food risk, the safety risk management protocols, and how do we design better food safety management practices. So this is briefly what we do, and wherever you think that I could be of help or I could be engaged, I would be very happy to do so. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sanjeev. And this is just what we were hoping for. These meetups would raise up some ideas for future opportunities to learn from each other. I've heard of all the great work you're doing there at South Dakota State. We have a comment in the chat here.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Hello, everyone. I think I got the email through IFB, and I'm very interested in education and food safety teaching, so I just got here. But I feel a little bit out of place. But I'm a food microbiology PhD student at the University of Georgia. I'm wondering if y'all think, or your goal is to make like a curriculum that will be uniform throughout the states for that purpose. Is this possible? Can it be done to have the same curriculum throughout?
Great question. That's the goal. And it was kind of inspired by a colleague who did this with the product development curriculum that will be coming out this year, intended for mostly food science departments. What's different about what we're trying to pull off is, since it's at an introductory level, we will make sure it's aligned to certain IFT standards, if you're familiar with those. But we're also really hoping that other disciplines, related disciplines, environmental health, public health, animal science, plant science, horticulture, missing out on a couple others on the fly here, because maybe the whole course would make sense for one of those institutions, or maybe they just want one or two modules out of it. So we're hoping it'll be one size fits all, but also very, custom to the workforce needs and higher education challenges.
How can we get a
Go on.
Yeah, please go ahead. I was just gonna ask, how can we get involved with helping with that process, or what are the qualifications you're looking for to be a part of this process?
I'm glad you asked. We were hoping someone would ask. We were going to mention it if no one did anyways. Chris will be sending out something after this meeting, and it'll have a sign up. So we would love for you to sign up. No qualifications needed. We're interested in feedback, especially from students, actually. We want to make sure the curriculum's engaging enough that they want to go in this career pathway, but also from experts. And Thai, I just responded to you in the chat there. Sounds like you have some great expertise you could contribute as well based on your work experiences. Absolutely. Bridget, you had a comment or question.
Yes, hi, how's everyone? I'm not a student now, but I'm a PhD holder. And my question is, and I think Dr. Sanjay mentioned it, that what PhD students do on that level, which is like research, statistics. But when I applied to this program, I didn't have any type of experience. Of course, my bachelor was in animal and science, my master's animal nutrition. So I got into this food science and technology program. I didn't know anything as a PhD student. I didn't know anything about auditing, about applying HACCP. I didn't know any of that. None. So I only learned once I got into the industry. So I guess my question would be, even on a PhD level, from experience, would it not be helpful? Because a lot of master students are coming in are not food science and technology students. They may come in from having some like a similar degree. So wouldn't that be helpful on a PhD level to have these PhD holders? Hey, this is auditing. This is how you do this. These are the 7 principles of HACCP. I think for me, it would have been very helpful to me. But when I got on my job in the industry for the first time, a USD worker had to actually train me into my job. I mean, I had the book sense, but I didn't have, what are the principles of HACCP? I didn't even know how to read a HACCP manual, how to even find the critical control points. So I think I would think that would be helpful, because as me, like a PhD student, I didn't have this HACCP, food safety background. I just animal dairy sciences, out on the farm, do statistical analysis. Of course, I wrote my dissertation, but if you asked me something about HACCP, probably know anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
So would that be something that maybe on that graduate level that could probably be touched on, or this is what you may encounter if you're going into the private sector?
Right. Good question, Abby. Anyone else? I'm curious what ideas you have. But that's kind of the goal of this meetup, is to inspire some ideas. I'll just mention I was feeling the same thing. It'd been about 12 years since I was in industry, being on the.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, Clint. Let me give recognition to you, because when I did get into the private job for the first time, I had to get HACCP certified, and I went through your program. So thank you.
Excellent, Bridget. I think you bring up a great concern, because there are a lot of graduate students who could use practical experience. That's why with the network portal I mentioned, we're going to be promoting network connections for them to see if someone's willing for them to shadow, as maybe just a one-day one-off. But Angela, you have your hand up. Do you want to take that comment, or?
Yeah, and I think that relates to your graduate course requirement. So part of our undergraduate course, everybody has to go through HACCP, PCQI, and now we added preventive controls for human, and they get to choose between human and animal. And now we have produce, part of our curriculum. And then on the graduate level, that's taught during the summer as courses. And so it's a requirement for our master's and our PhD. They have to be certified, or they have to get the certificate for all of those. So I think it goes back to what school and what requirements are.
Was this animal science?
Yeah, we're animal and food science, but this is our food science specific.
Yeah, I was animal and dairy science. I wasn't food science. I was animal and dairy science.
Yeah, that might be the difference. Our food science students, they're all required to have HACCP, now preventive control human. We have the option for animal, and then produce as a requirement.
But what if you're not in that field? And of course, and as a graduate student, you say, okay, well, I want to major in this, like I did. That is what I'm talking about. So still, it would have been helpful had I had that under my belt, but I didn't.
I can quickly respond to you, Bridget. Like, we have the dairy and food science program. So the question that you have, like many of the students who come straight to PhD or even masters, could be international students, even if they have not graduated in the United States. So how the program, like what Angela was trying to say, was that at undergraduate level, that's a requirement, whether it's a dairy manufacturing student or a food science, everybody has to pass through food micro and dairy micro. So they get already trained into that. But let's say we have students who straight came to a master's or a PhD program, then depending upon, because all of them are graduate research assistants, like I have mine too. So the ones which are going to the food safety, risk assessment, pathogens, any sort of thing dealing with food safety, microbiology aspects. Now, these are the students. Then as an advisor, I always make them take the undergraduate course before they come to the advanced dairy course, because there is a 60 credit to be taken. So out of that, the academic credits, we always not force them, but recommend them to take dairy micro and food micro, so that serves as a prerequisite to the advanced dairy and food micro. And that's how their journey completes. So
And
this
that
is
was what I was trying to say. Yes,
this
that's
is
a
how we do
requirement.
it in
Yeah.
South Dakota State.
Right. I took that class, but my thing is, so I took it, and I could go in the industry and I say, okay, this is not right, that's not right. But what the panel is talking about, food safety, HACCP principles, auditing, didn't get that. Those are what I'm focusing on, because when you go into the industry, they're going to say, do you have this experience? Well, thank God, when our director hired me, I had the classroom, but I knew nothing about the 7 principles of HACCP. Of course, I knew research, biological age. Yeah, I knew that, but I knew nothing about to even write a HACCP plan. I knew nothing about auditing, nothing. So that's what, as like you say, coming in, but then have that food science. So what could be helpful for a PhD student coming in who did not have that food science, but had like animal dairy sciences that know nothing about auditing or HACCP? How can that be included into a program? I say, just say like a student such as I was.
Yeah, good comment. And it is 3 o'clock. Abby, you said you need to peel off at 3 o'clock. And so thank you so much for being here and kickstarting this lively discussion. Look forward to keeping in touch. But I'm going to stick around because I want to keep going in the discussion. If you guys want, I'll stick around as long as you guys want to. But we'll have another one of these again. So yeah, thanks, Abby. Have a good day. Jessica, did you want to comment on the discussion?
I can't really talk about as a student because I worked my way up through all these years in food safety, but as a regulator, you do, well, at least in Massachusetts, local and state, you have to take FDA courses that talk about microbiology, basic HACCP. And then if you do, I was a state inspector and had to do FDA inspections, but I wanted to do shellfish and seafood. So I had to get seafood HACCP certified. So there's different kinds of HACCPs as well, depending on what you want to do. So just keep that in mind. And then also, if you're an auditor, which I don't know if they do it at a school level, you want to keep in mind specialized processes. So for example, a dairy plant, you would need to know about pasteurization and all the equipment that goes along with it. And FDA does offer courses on that. In the state of Massachusetts, we have different departments. So there's dairy guys, there's meat and poultry guy, there's food processing. I was under food processing. And so I had to learn about fermentation. I didn't know what Kenke was, even with a culinary background. I Googled it, I YouTubed it, figured it out. It's a specialized fermented rice, and then you boil it, and it's a different animal. But I had to teach myself that process, but learning about acidification and fermentation through FDA helped me get through that. So just something to keep that in mind as well. Like this could open up so many avenues, but it depends which route you want to go is what I'm saying. But I didn't culinary, I learned about food law and ServSafe. That's it. And then just learning all the stuff as I became a regulator and in industry. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, good one. And
I was going to say, we do have a request for the sign up, the involvement link. Chris, can you put it in the chat, or is that something that needs to be sent out after?
Oh, the sign up. Yeah, I can dig that up. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, good comment, Jessica, Bridget. I think all we're trying to do is get people excited. Whether they first got excited in grad school, or if they got excited as a freshman, or someone who's mid-career and looking for a lateral career move. That's one of the biggest problems with workforce development, right? Get people interested. And what I'll share is I've learned this industry is so nice, actually. If you're a newbie, I've seen numerous companies, certification bodies who are willing to accept you for who you are. As long as you're curious to learn more and get more experience. I've found so many mentors. Last year I took a sabbatical and I worked with a certification body doing audits. I also did a lot of consulting, helping people get ready for audits. And that was just amazing because, we all know that when you reach the end of the rope and you don't know the answers to the questions, Better Process Control School, Seafood HACCP, you can always call a friend and sometimes it's costly to go through these programs, but there's really helpful people. And hopefully this network portal facilitates some of that: job shadowing, guest speakers, interviews, things along those lines. Because I talked about my story at the beginning. I had 2 degrees in food science, to your point, Bridget. I worked graveyard shift at a cheese factory and was so embarrassed that first few months. I was like running a sanitation crew and didn't know the basics. Sanitation verification and sanitizer concentrations and all that stuff. So, but they brought me up to speed. Hey, Fernando, are you still there? We'd love to hear from you because we heard that Puerto Rico, there, your university. Thanks, Jessica. Fernando, you're an SQF training center, is that right?
Hello, everybody. It was right until a few years ago. So happened that there was a change in our training contract, our license for as a training center, and they told us that we could only train students, and not every student is interested in SQF, or they really know what that is. Much less auditing is something that we have to teach them how to go about it. So there is really not much interest from students to go into auditing or SQF. We were actually providing training for industry, but since they said no, you can only do students, it was too expensive just to train students, so we had to drop the license. But we do have 2 courses, and we do offer training to industry in several topics related to food science, not food science, food safety. For students, we have specifically 2 courses. One is a food safety course. It is taught as at the undergraduate and graduate level. It has different flavor on each level. At the undergraduate level, we go into the regulations. We emphasize the GMPs and what food safety is. What let's see. It's mostly focused on how to understand the regulation and how to identify where you're having food safety risk based on GMPs. But then once we establish, we go from the 15 weeks of the semester, we probably have, I don't know, 8 weeks of GMPs. And then we have like 3 or 4 weeks where we do HACCP. So we train them on what HACCP is, the methodology, and then we develop like a HACCP plan in class, and then they have like a project to actually develop a HACCP plan for a product. And then at the very end of the course, we basically touch on the produce safety rule, the PCQI, another labeling, allergen controls, and another food safety related topics. That's basically the undergrad course. At the graduate level, initially we were hosting both students in the same room in the same course, but there is a disparity between the level of understanding of what food safety is between undergrads and graduate students. So we decided to split that. And basically now we have the graduate level where they do go into more case studies and things like that. It's more in depth. And then we have the other course, which is like food safety and quality management. And then on that one, we go into the Global Food Safety Initiative, and then we look at the different schemes like SQF or BRC or FSSC 22,000, etc. So we go down from the GFSI requirements and how the different schemes actually code that in the protocols and what are the requirements. We compare one another in the different areas. And in that course, more than actually going through the book or the standard and reading what it requires, and we do that, some of that, but most they do have homework every week, and the homework is more like go search information on this particular issue. Let's do one of the weeks that we talk about kappa, and I teach them how to actually prepare a kappa report, how to do we cover the quality tools, what a Pareto analysis is, and things like that. Just briefly, we basically touch like one or two classes on the tools, and then we go, each week we go building on top one topic on top of the next one. And there comes a time when they have to put together everything into a kappa report. So I prepared this case study and prepare some documents and records, made up records of a situation where there was a non-conformance, and they have to interpret all the data and come up with a kappa report. So we do that in that course, and things of that nature where they are learning what GFSI is, what's the intent, and how the different schemes actually uh, put together the protocol and what are their specific requirements, how they conduct the audits, how do they do the scores and things like that. So the intent again is for them to be prepared to go out there, and whenever they reach whatever industry, if they are doing BRC, then they know what it is, and they have a basic knowledge of what's going to happen on how that works. If it's SQF or FSSC 22000, doesn't really matter because they already know the basics, and whatever details are required, they can actually pick up on their own. So I guess that's us. So the other thing, talking about or thinking about a little bit about what Bridget was saying, we do offer courses to industry, and we encourage our students to actually take them. So we do offer special pricing on them, on those courses for students. And again, every semester, we put together our calendar of courses and we send it out, and we send messages. We harass students for them to actually go and take the courses. We send, specific messages for like agriculture field students or microbiology students to actually, understand what is it that what the workshop will be covering, and how they can relate to it. So, if they are like Bridget in dairy science, we don't have dairy science, we have animal science, or industrial microbiology, that we send a message that they can read the message and say, well, this might be a future job opportunity for me. So, let me look into it. So what I'm trying to say is we do not send out a generic message saying, well, we're having GMP training, this is the link and this is how much you have to pay. But we do all go a little bit beyond that and say, this is why it is important or might be important for you. So that's that. So one other thing I do want to mention is that the undergrad course in food safety, it's open to everyone. It has absolutely no requirements. The only requirement is, and it's an elective course. So the only requirement is for you to be interested. If you're there, it's because somehow it was attractive, the course or the topic was attractive to you. So that's it. And when I offer the course, I assume they know nothing. So I go very basic and then go from there. So some of them have no microbiology background whatsoever. So, you have to go really basic. Okay. So that's us. Thank you.
That's right. Thanks, Fernando. So nice to meet you finally. Sounds like you're doing great things there. I'm taking notes here. Yeah, excellent. Well, any other comments or questions? I'm having fun. Yvonne, you were mentioning you're working in Mexico and Latin America, working in the teaching world and industry, right? Yeah, that's excellent.
Yes, thank you.
You're seeing some of the same challenges.
I think more challenges because they are supposed to be already prepared, but they are not. I think most of the times they just forgot, they just don't care anymore. It's very, very challenging. And we see that in huge, small, medium-sized companies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I totally relate to that. I think it's the same way in a lot of places. So if we can build up a new workforce coming out of high schools, community colleges, four-year schools, we just need more people. One of the things that struck me when they recruited me to food science when I was 18 years old, they said, it's great over here. We have a 100% job placement rate. And we still say that as a university here at NC State. But if you turn it on its head, it's like, hey, that's actually problematic. Why isn't this competitive like medical school or veterinary school? These should be competitive jobs, don't you think? I don't know. So we're hoping with our project, we're going to identify methods to really get more and more people interested. And I think what I've learned since my sabbatical and stuff like that is these jobs, if we pitch them the right way, I think a lot of students will actually be pretty excited about them. A lot of my students had never really heard of these types of jobs. They came into food science thinking they were going to be an executive chef or being in a science lab. And when I joined food science, I would have loved to hear about these opportunities, you know, being boots on the ground, being an SQF practitioner, or working for a certification body or doing consulting, because I think a lot of the students get excited about working with people, saving the day, putting out a fire, saving costs, which you can do if you really dial in some of the statistical process control that we heard about at South Dakota State and Puerto Rico. So absolutely. Fernando, you have another comment?
Yes, I just wanted to say that we did do something else with our graduate students, and is that there's something called Puerto Rico Manufacturing Extension, and they started offering services for like making sure the food industry is compliant with GMPs, HACCP, food safety plans, and so on and so forth. So we established this agreement where we were sending them our students, and they would hire the students for, as hourly workers, and then send them out to the different industry for them to actually do like an audit of the GMPs and their food safety plans, and develop whatever documents were needed. In some instances, I believe they actually went and offered some training for a specific industry. So that's something that we did do. We still have one students working with them. Because the program was for like 2 or 3 years, and after that the program ended, but they continue with one or two students from our students in the roster, sending them out. They do have one student. I don't know if they're gonna be doing any more hiring after that one. So, that's something we did do.
I like that idea. I've been thinking about that a lot because every state has a manufacturing extension partnership, or whatever the MEP acronym stands for, and they do a lot of extension with all industries, but certainly food industry. That reminds me, one idea I decided last week I was at the SQF conference, the SQF Unites. Next year it's in St. Louis. Wow, amazing conference. If you haven't gone, I think you would enjoy it, anybody. If you came to this webinar, I'm sure you would. And by the way, they have awesome student scholarships. They get $3,000 and a travel grant to attend the scholarship. So if you see a motivated student, definitely nominate them. The students were having a blast. But I got back from that conference and decided, you know what? My goal is to become an SQF auditor. I need 160 auditing hours. I'm just going to invite myself to some of my local companies. I called my friend at a seafood company last night and said, I volunteer to do your next internal audit with you, and can I bring a couple students? So we're going to spend 7 or 8 hours doing a process audit, picking 3 production dates and making sure everything checks out with the receiving, supplier approval, all the way to finished products. And that'll give me 8 more hours. It'll also give the students some hours work. We'll put them to work, you know what I mean? So I think this is fun. Abby's talk really inspired me, gave me some ideas on how to do it in the classroom. But I'm going to really try to work that angle. Like, hey, students, raise your hand if you want to get out of classes for a day. I'll write an excuse letter for you. Let's go hit the road, you know? Maybe come back with some awesome seafood or something like that. So, and I've noticed working with certification bodies, they're very open, you know, to mentoring. Like I said earlier, like I wouldn't be surprised if they would and have someone meet us there to be part of the process, looking for more audit hours. I also networked with someone at that conference last week who is in Missouri, who has a nonprofit where they provide auditing and consulting as a pro bono. Isn't that interesting? I thought those types of groups would be really good ones to work with, because they're nonprofit and wanting to make things better just like we are. So anyway, well, any other comments? I don't know when to end this discussion. I'm having fun. I know people have some things you got to get back to later today. I think we heard from everybody. Fi, we got you in the room now. Are you there? I was reading your chat.
Hi, Clint. My name is Twee.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Don't worry. You pronounce it like a lot of people. I actually I've worked with Ben Chapman. So he's also with NC State, right?
That's right.
Yep, he presents a lot for us at APTO and WAPTO. So I've worked with him in the past. And I guess the other thing that I forgot to list is, my background is food safety. Very familiar with HACCP, seafood HACCP, different specialized processes, ROP, all that fun stuff. That's obviously in my previous life, but always my first love, which is pathogens and anything that causes vomit and diarrhea. If I can fit that into a conversation, it's my favorite thing in the world. But now I mostly work in the cannabis and hemp space, and then now with psilocybin legalizing in various states, as well as an increase in kava and kratom bars. I'm offering my expertise to walk with regulators from different jurisdictions so that they understand kind of what I look for specifically when I've gone into these types of operations, so that I can not only identify the public health risks, but also any sort of concerns, because sometimes, when it's a new commodity, they're unsure of how they should proceed. But, I just try to tell them, hey, it's kind of like everything else. You just have to not think about that specific commodity as being, let's just say, for instance, kava, think of it as a food ingredient. Think about, approved source. Think about, what pathogens you might be concerned with based on how it's processed. But again, I work with a lot of retail inspectors, so they don't necessarily understand the agricultural side of it or even the manufacturing side of it. Because I used to be a retail food inspector, and I remember, my expertise was very focused specifically on retail food. But then once I kind of, left the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment, that's when I started focusing more on manufactured foods, especially when you look at cannabis and hemp, because that's all manufactured foods, right? For finished goods, consumer product goods for the industry or for the rest. So yeah, I am happy to help out. I love to educate. I think that's really what my passion is. I love to share my knowledge and expertise because it's unique in that, you know, I was a regulator. I was all over the news from everything that I had done as a regulator. And then I stepped into the industry and, you know, actually ran departments and ran companies in both cannabis and hemp industry, helping them get certified and accredited and really trying to elevate them as a company. And then also realizing, you know, it's fun, but you're also limited by, you know, what that company is willing to do. And so I went back into consulting, went back to work with, you know, regulators in various states. I trained a lot of the regulators. I was even invited by FDA, you know, to come in and train during one of, or actually two of their regional conferences after, like about 2 years after they all stood up and walked out of my presentation back in 2014 because they were given a memo stating that they weren't allowed to hear what I had to say. And this is when I was a regulator for Denver doing all the recalls and product disposals and embargoes. And that was very frightening to me because I was on stage. They had just announced me and introduced me, and then half of the room stood up and walked out. And I was like, oh, what's going on? So for them to invite me back a few years later to present at the regional conferences was actually quite wonderful for me. So, but I'm happy to help out however I can, and I would love to, you know, assist. I don't know that I would be able to take anybody on, you know, a joint inspection with me per se. I actually work very closely with New Mexico currently. One of my contracts that I have is to audit cannabis testing laboratories. And you know, if you follow the news at all, you'll see some of the things that is actually happening, and we're currently you know, preparing for a hearing with one of the cannabis labs at the end of the month. But I wouldn't be able to take anybody with me. But if somebody wanted me to join them, you know, to conduct an inspection as another set of eyes, or even to provide my knowledge, you know, I'm happy to do that. And if you guys have you know, guest speakers in any of your courses or anything, I'm happy to do that. Just happy to share, you know, whatever I can.
Oh, that's great. Twee, did I say your name correctly?
Twee, yeah, like Tweety Bird.
Right. Nice. You have some amazing expertise, and thank you so much for opening them up to us. So we'll let you know when this network portal is open. We'd love to connect students with you because it's exciting to hear from you and everyone else on this call. And you mentioned something that I observed during my sabbatical as a gateway, perhaps, or maybe a lifelong adventure for some people's careers. Speaking of students, you know, they're not going to be out of the gate doing SQF audits, right? You have to have work experience, you have to have auditing hours, but most towns have a lot of fast food chains, and every one of those fast food chains is audited by some sort of second party, typically monthly, right? Sometimes quarterly. These are 2-hour audits that pay $30, $40 an hour or something like that in my experience. And I thought those would be great experiences to bring students to because they're basic audits. They're according to the fast food chain standards. And with minimal training time, I think especially like a senior after studying a bunch of these concepts should be able to hit the ground running and then go from there and develop their resume going into manufacturing or whatever, or just stay in fast food. That's one of the things I want to work on as well. So I do have to go. I was just remembering, pick up the kids from school here in 15 minutes. I would like to stay and hang out with you guys, but thanks so much, everyone, for joining the meeting. It's nice to meet you, Fernando, Bridget, Twee, Yvonne, everyone else who already signed off. So we would love it if you would click the link that Chris shared. We'll also send it in a follow-up email. We'll make this recording available to everyone who couldn't make it, if that's okay with everybody. And we'll let you know when the next meetup is. We were thinking we'd do another one in the fall semester. But in the meantime, let's chat. Let's meet up at conferences. If you're going to be at the IAFP conference, for example, we will be there, some of us. Maybe we could have another meetup there. And if you do the sign up there, then we definitely will have future engagements. Like soon we're going to roll out some of the curriculum and ask for feedback before it's final and things like that. So, all right. Well, this is just what I needed during spring break. I got motivated, charged my batteries. Look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay.